What if I told you that what you call empathy might not be a gift at all, but a scar? Think about it. You're not just feeling others' pain, you're carrying it as if it's your own. But Carl Jung warned us, this isn't compassion, it's survival in disguise. And the shocking truth? The very thing you thought made you special may be the very thing that's breaking you. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see yourself forever. That's the silent truth many empaths live by. They believe they've been gifted with a sacred ability to feel everyone's pain, like emotional sponges soaking up every drop of sorrow around them. They say, when someone hurts near me, I hurt too. I can't stop it. I can't protect myself. And slowly, this identity begins to look less like a gift and more like a curse dressed as virtue. Before we dive deeper, pause for a second. If what I'm saying resonates with you, if you've ever felt crushed under the weight of emotions that weren't yours, hit like and subscribe. It helps push this message forward and signals to YouTube that this truth is worth spreading. Now, here's the unsettling part. What if this isn't a divine gift at all? What if it's not empathy in its purest sense, but something far darker, something born from old wounds you didn't choose? Carl Jung warned us that what many call empathy might actually be a scar, a survival trick learned in childhood. And the terrifying question is, are you truly carrying compassion? Or are you carrying chains you never noticed were there? The answer may change how you see yourself forever. Carrying fire in bare hands. Think about it. Many who call themselves empaths describe the same haunting feeling. When someone suffers near me, I suffer too. I can't shut it off. I can't shield myself. At first glance, it sounds noble, almost holy, like a chosen soul carrying the grief of the world. But pause. Is it really a gift, or is it like carrying fire in your bare hands and convincing yourself the burns are proof of kindness? You might ask, but isn't feeling deeply what makes me empathetic? Carl Jung would whisper back, not always. Feeling someone's pain doesn't always mean empathy. Sometimes it means you've blurred the line between where you end and another begins. Imagine a tree with roots so tangled in another tree's soil that it can't stand on its own. That's not strength, that's entanglement. True empathy, Jung taught, requires boundaries. It's knowing what belongs to me and what belongs to you. Without that, what many call empathy is simply survival in disguise, a child's defense mechanism carried into adulthood. So the question is no longer, am I gifted, but rather, am I free? And if you're not, what price are you still paying for wounds you never healed? When mirrors forget their own face. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Just because you feel another person's pain doesn't mean you're showing empathy. Real empathy isn't about dissolving into someone else's suffering. It's about standing close enough to understand, but far enough to stay whole. Jung warned us, without boundaries, what you call empathy is really fusion, and fusion is not love. Think of it like this. When you hold a mirror, it reflects what's in front of it, but it never stops being glass. Many empaths, however, become mirrors that forget their own face. They reflect, absorb, and then lose the image of who they are. They say, I feel your pain as if it's my own. But the danger is exactly that. It becomes their own, and soon they no longer know where they end and the other begins. You might ask, but isn't that what makes me a caring person? Number. True compassion doesn't require you to bleed just because someone else is wounded. Real empathy can sit with pain without making it a home. Anything else is survival dressed as virtue, an echo of a role learned long ago. And once you see that, the question becomes, are you truly helping or just disappearing? The child who became a shield. Many so-called empaths were not born with some mystical gift, they were trained by chaos. Imagine a child growing up in a home where moods swing like storms. One day the parent is tender, the next day cruel, or worse, absent. That child learns fast. If I don't watch them closely, if I don't soothe their rage or sadness, something terrible might happen. This survival trick becomes second nature. The child becomes a tiny shield, taking on emotions too heavy for small shoulders, and while it may have kept them safe then, it hardens into chains later. As adults, they still feel the same compulsion: to save, to heal, to carry. They believe they are being virtuous, but in truth, they are replaying the same childhood bargain. If I fix them, maybe I'll finally be safe. Maybe I'll finally be loved. You might think, but isn't that strength? Number. It is strength borrowed from fear. Real strength doesn't come from becoming everyone's savior. It comes from knowing where you end. Jung called this distinction vital. Compassion with boundaries is healing. Compassion without boundaries is self-erasure. And that raises a darker question. Are you loving others or just protecting your wounded child within? The Savior's curse. When that child grows into an adult, the old survival script doesn't vanish. It calcifies. Now the grown empath feels an unspoken law inside them. I must carry the pain of others, even when it's crushing me. This is what Jung would call a compulsion, not a calling. It's the endless cycle of the exhausted savior. At work, they become the one who never says no, the reliable rescuer, not just of tasks, but of everyone's moods. In love, they endure storms, believing their purpose is to be the harbor that never leaves. With friends, they become the eternal advisor, even as no one notices their own silent collapse. You might think this is kindness, but look closer. It's a prison. The empath tells themselves, if I heal them, maybe someone will finally heal me. But that day never comes, because transformation cannot be borrowed, it can only be lived. So they give until they're empty, trapped in exhaustion, guilt, and resentment. The cruel irony? What looks like selfless love is often an attempt to rescue their own wounded child, but no one else can do that work, and until they see it, the Savior's curse never ends. The weight that was never yours. Jung noticed something unsettling. Children who grow up carrying their parents' moods don't just take on feelings, they swallow shadows. They absorb guilt, fear, and frustration that were never meant for them. Like sponges left in dirty water, they hold what doesn't belong. Years later, as adults, they wake up heavy with emotions they can't explain. Anxieties without a cause, guilt without a crime, pain without a name. You might ask, but if I feel it, isn't it mine? Number. Feeling it doesn't make it yours. It means you were trained to hold what others couldn't face. You became the family's container, the silent vault for secrets and storms. This is why so many empaths walk through life like haunted houses, full of echoes that aren't theirs. They confuse compassion with possession, carrying sorrows that seep into their bones. And the tragedy is this: what once kept them safe as children now bleeds them dry as adults. The truth? Excessive empathy is not a blessing. It is often a scar. And until you see which wounds belong to you and which were inherited, you'll keep dragging chains that were never meant to be yours. The endless rescue mission. When the child who once protected unstable parents becomes an adult, the script continues like an unbroken spell. They move through life with an invisible law etched into their bones. I must save everyone. Their peace is my peace. Their chaos is my fault. This is the cycle of the exhausted savior, a loop that drains more with every turn. At work, they are the dependable one, always available, always absorbing not just tasks, but tensions. In relationships, they become the anchor, even when their partner is a storm that never calms. Among friends, they are the wise advisor, the healer, the listener. But when their own soul cries, silence is the only reply. You might wonder, but isn't this love? Look closer. It is not love, but compulsion. It is not generosity, but a desperate hope. If I heal them, maybe someone will finally heal me. Yet that day never comes, because no one can do your healing for you. And so the Savior pours until empty, waiting for a return that never arrives. The tragedy? The mission that feels like virtue is often just an endless rescue of the wounded child within. When help becomes a cage. Here lies the cruel paradox. The false empath doesn't just feel others' pain, they feel guilty when they can't erase it. Every no sounds like betrayal, every boundary feels like abandonment. So they keep saying yes, even as their spirit screams for rest. Jung saw this not as compassion, but as toxic fusion, the collapse of self into another's chaos. Picture a candle placed too close to a fire. Instead of shining, it melts away. That is what happens when boundaries are missing. Love without boundaries is not love, it is consumption. The empath is consumed while the other remains unchanged. Why? Because true healing is never transferable. You cannot live another's life. You cannot bleed another's wounds dry. You might ask, but isn't stepping back selfish? Number. Selfishness is pretending to save when you are only drowning with them. Boundaries are not walls that push love away. They are doors that make love real. Without them, kindness becomes self-punishment, and care turns into silent resentment. The tragedy is clear. In trying to save everyone else, the false empath becomes both prisoner and jailer, locked in a cage they built from their own endless yes. The applause for your chains. From the start, culture rewards this pattern. Families praise the selfless child. Schools applaud the one who never complains, who helps until exhaustion. Religion blesses the sacrifice of self, as if dissolving your soul were the highest form of love. Slowly, the empath learns a dangerous lie. To be good is to be limitless. This is why emotional fusion so often gets celebrated as virtue. The one who feels everything is admired, while the one who dares to set a boundary is branded selfish. And so, many empaths confuse anxiety with intuition. I feel I must fix this now, and mistake hypervigilance for sensitivity. I can read the room like no one else. But here's the cruel twist. That radar, sharpened in childhood, once kept them safe. Now it keeps them enslaved. Their nervous system never rests. Every glance, every tone, every silence becomes a signal to decode. They are always on guard, like a soldier who has forgotten the war is over. So ask yourself, are you truly guided by intuition or haunted by old alarms? Because what once kept you alive may now be the very chain that keeps you from living. The porous soul. The signs of this myth are painfully clear once you start looking. The false empath cannot bear the discomfort of others without rushing to intervene, as if silence itself were a crime. They feel compelled to advise, to mediate, to patch every crack they see. And when they finally try to rest, a new weight crushes them. Guilt. Guilt for saying no, guilt for stepping back, guilt for even thinking of themselves. Their self-worth rises and falls like a tide, depending on the moods of those around them. If everyone is calm, they feel safe. If chaos erupts, they feel shattered. Jung described this as the ego becoming too porous, the self dissolving into the emotions of the collective. Imagine a sponge thrown into every puddle it meets. Soon it is too heavy to float, soaked with water that was never its own. This is the empath's curse, a life guided not by their own inner compass, but by the storms of others. And here lies the real danger. Without solid boundaries, individuation, the very process of becoming who you truly are is stolen. What remains is a life lived for others, but never for yourself. The child who learned to read storms. To understand why empaths feel chained to everyone's pain, you have to return to the first battlefield, childhood. Picture a house where moods shift without warning. One day a parent is warm, the next day cold, or burning with rage. For the child, safety depends on reading every signal. They become a watchtower, scanning faces, voices, silences, because missing one cue could mean disaster. If father looks ready to explode, the child smiles, soothes, distracts. If mother collapses, the child becomes caretaker, playing the role of parent far too soon. The silent lesson is etched deep. My survival depends on fixing their emotions. And while this skill may shield them in youth, it cripples them in adulthood. They never learn where they end and others begin. Their boundaries dissolve before they're even formed. Jung called this loss of differentiation, the inability to say, "This is mine, that is yours." So the adult still carries the same script. If I heal you, maybe you'll finally see me, love me, protect me. But the truth is brutal. This pact was never theirs to keep. What once saved them as children now chains them as grown souls. The scar disguised as a gift. Here lies the cruel irony. What once kept the child alive becomes a burden that slowly crushes the adult. The empath grows up believing their purpose is to carry what others cannot, mistaking exhaustion for nobility. They walk into jobs where they bleed themselves dry for the sake of others, into relationships where their worth is measured by how much pain they can absorb. And all the while, they call it love. But Jung would say differently, this is not a gift, it is a scar. A scar from years of carrying sorrows that never belonged to them. These adults often feel guilt without a reason, fear without a cause, sadness without a source. Why? Because they're carrying shadows that were never theirs to hold. They are like travelers weighed down by suitcases packed by someone else. You might wonder, but isn't this what makes me good? Number. It makes you heavy. Feeling too much isn't proof of divine sensitivity. It's evidence of a wound left untreated. Until you see that truth, you'll keep calling your chains a halo, and the world will keep praising your suffering while you quietly drown beneath the weight. The illusion of rescue. When the wounded child becomes an adult, the old pact doesn't disappear. It becomes law. They move through life with a silent command carved into their bones. I must fix them, or I will lose them. I must carry their pain, or I will be abandoned. And so begins the endless rescue mission, the cycle of the exhausted savior. At work, they are the one who stays late, not just finishing tasks, but absorbing everyone's stress. In love, they become the partner who endures storms, convinced their role is to be the anchor that never leaves. Among friends, they are the listener, the healer, the one who always gives but never receives. You might ask, but isn't this real devotion? Look deeper. It is not devotion. It is desperation. It is the hope that by fixing another, someone will finally fix them. But here's the tragedy. No one can heal on borrowed strength. Transformation is always an inside job. So the Savior gives until empty, waiting for a reward that never comes. And the cruel truth is this: what looks like selfless love is often just the adult trying again and again to rescue the child they once were. The prison of guilt. For the false empath, the trap isn't just exhaustion, it's guilt. When they fail to help, when they step back, when they whisper no, a wave of shame crashes in. They feel as though they've betrayed some sacred mission, abandoned someone who needed them. This guilt is the invisible chain that keeps them bound to the role of rescuer long after their strength is gone. They tell themselves, if I don't hold them together, they'll fall apart. And it will be my fault. So they sacrifice rest, health, even identity, believing collapse is better than being selfish. But this is not compassion. It is a prison, built from fear of abandonment and cemented by old wounds. Jung warned that without boundaries, empathy mutates into toxic fusion, a collapse where self and other blur until neither can breathe. Love becomes dependency. Care becomes control. The empath is both prisoner and guard, drained but terrified of letting go. You might wonder, but isn't sacrifice the proof of love? Number. Real love respects freedom. Real compassion allows space. Without it, the empath burns away piece by piece, mistaking their own ashes for proof of kindness. The world on your shoulders. This is the paradox of the exhausted savior. They spend their lives propping up others, yet cannot stand on their own. They believe their worth lies in being the one who carries, fixes, absorbs. But Jung revealed the truth. This isn't empathy, it's entrapment. It is toxic fusion, where the self collapses into another's storm and forgets the sound of its own voice. Boundaries become the dividing line between compassion and self-erasure. With boundaries, you can say, I see your pain, but I will not drown in it. Without them, you melt into every crisis until nothing of you remains. Picture Atlas, the titan condemned to hold the sky. Many empaths live the same way, stooped, aching, convinced the world would collapse if they ever set it down. But the sky is not theirs to hold. You might whisper, but if I let go, won't they fall apart? The hard truth is this: if their stability depends entirely on you, it was never real stability. Compassion is not carrying another's life. It is standing beside them while they carry their own. Anything else is just slavery dressed as sainthood. The mirror that melt. Jung drew a sharp line between true empathy and its dangerous counterfeit. Many confuse the two, but they are not the same. Empathy is presence. It is standing at the edge of another's sorrow, listening, feeling, but still rooted in yourself. Fusion is collapse. The walls between you and them vanish, and suddenly their storm floods your house. Think of a mirror. A real mirror reflects what stands before it, but never stops being glass. A false empath becomes a mirror that melts, losing its shape and identity. They think this is compassion, but it is only survival. The old reflex of a child who once believed, if I don't carry this pain, no one will. You might ask, but isn't feeling deeply what makes me good? Number. Feeling without boundaries isn't goodness. It's self-erasure. True compassion doesn't require you to bleed just because someone else is wounded. It allows you to sit with them, hand on their shoulder, while remembering your own heartbeat. The danger is subtle, but devastating. When empathy turns into fusion, you don't just share pain. You lose yourself to it. And without yourself, there can be no real love at all. The thief in disguise. Why does emotional fusion so often wear the mask of compassion? Because it rewards you in hidden ways. First, it gives you a story. I am the good one, the sensitive one, the one who carries what others cannot. Second, it grants a false sense of control. If I can manage their emotions, maybe I will finally have peace. And third, it keeps you from facing your own shadow, your anger, your hunger, your unmet needs, by projecting them onto others. Jung warned that the persona, the mask we wear for the world, often hides the darkest truths of the self. The empath's mask of kindness becomes a stage for moral superiority. I know what you need better than you do. But beneath the applause lies a slow decay. Burnout, resentment, relationships that feel lopsided and draining. Imagine a well that gives water to every passerby, yet never refills itself. Eventually, it runs dry, cracked and empty, though everyone praised its generosity. This is the fate of the false empath. So ask yourself, is your compassion pure, or is it a thief in disguise, stealing from your soul while convincing you it's sainthood? The self that slips away. The consequences of this false empathy are painfully predictable. Emotional exhaustion becomes a way of life. Relationships tilt out of balance, one always giving, the other always taking. Silent resentment builds, hidden under the mask of kindness. And soon, the empath finds themselves stuck in a cycle Jung described as the drama triangle. Sometimes savior, sometimes victim, sometimes persecutor, shifting roles as frustration festers. They often say, "Why do I keep attracting broken people?" But the truth is harsher. They don't just attract them, they choose them. They offer themselves as free emotional regulators, believing it is love. And when those they try to heal don't change, and they rarely do, the empath is torn between guilt, "I didn't do enough," and bitterness, "No one does for me what I do for them." It is like trying to patch holes in a sinking ship with your bare hands, while your own vessel quietly floods beneath you. The effort never ends, because the task was never yours to begin with. And this raises the darker question. If your worth depends on healing others, who will you be when there is no one left to save? The fear of saying no. One of the cruelest lies the false empath believes is that boundaries equal coldness. They fear that if they ever draw a line, they will lose love, be branded selfish, or be abandoned. So they keep giving. They keep saying yes. They keep silencing their own needs until nothing is left but exhaustion. But Jung saw it clearly. Without boundaries, empathy rots. Love turns into control. I must fix you to feel safe. Care turns into erasure. Your needs matter, mine do not. What begins as compassion ends as resentment. Picture a house with no doors, no windows, no walls. Anyone can walk in, take what they want, leave their mess behind. That is a life without boundaries. But when the walls are firm and the door is strong, you can still welcome others inside, only now it is on your terms. You might whisper, "But won't they leave me if I say no?" The truth is harder. If your love depends on endless sacrifice, it was never love. It was dependence. Real compassion is not drowning with someone. It is saying, "I will stand by you, but I will not vanish for you." That is the courage boundaries bring. The applause that drains you. Society doesn't just allow this cycle, it rewards it. Families praise the child who sacrifices without complaint. Schools admire the student who always helps, even at their own expense. Religions glorify the one who gives everything away, branding endless selflessness as holiness. Slowly, the empath learns a deadly equation. Being good means being limitless. And so they confuse panic with intuition. I must fix this now, or something terrible will happen. They mistake hypervigilance for sensitivity. I can read the room better than anyone. What once kept them safe in childhood becomes a curse in adulthood, a nervous system wired to detect storms that may never come. Picture a soldier who never leaves the battlefield, always scanning, always bracing for attack, even in peacetime. That is the empath's body, alert, restless, exhausted, burning energy on ghosts of threats long gone. You might wonder, but isn't this proof of my gift? Number. It is proof of old wounds replaying themselves. What looks like intuition is often fear in disguise. And as long as society keeps clapping for your suffering, you'll believe your chains are wings, while your spirit quietly collapses under the weight of applause. The chains you can finally lay down. And this is where everything we've uncovered comes full circle. What so many call empathy, Carl Jung would reveal as something far more unsettling. A scar disguised as a gift. The endless rescuing, the guilt, the exhaustion, the blurred lines between self and other. None of it is proof of divine sensitivity. It is the echo of a wounded child still trying to earn safety through sacrifice. But here's the truth. You were never meant to carry everyone's pain. Real empathy does not drown you, it steadies you. True compassion does not erase you, it allows you to love without losing yourself. And individuation, the process Jung described as becoming whole, begins the moment you stop mistaking chains for wings. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you carrying the world's sorrow because you choose to? Or because you never learned you had the right to put it down? If this message struck something deep in you, let YouTube know it matters. Hit like, subscribe to this channel, and comment the number 77 below. That one act signals the algorithm to spread this truth wider, so others can finally see the prison they mistook for a halo. Your freedom might be the spark for theirs.